Okay, we'll call the meeting to order of the Assembly Budget Subcommittee number 2 on Education and Finance. Please call the roll.
Mr. McCarty?
Here.
Mr. Chavez? Here. Ms. Kim?
Here.
Mr. O'Donnell? Mr. Tang?
Okay, thank you. Established a quorum. Okay, good afternoon. Today we will be discussing some more higher education items on the state budget related to UC Hastings College of Law and the California Student Aid Commission. We'll be taking a few actions. Look forward to a robust dialogue today, especially on our student aid, financial aid system in the state of California. We know how significant it is to ensure that college is affordable and accessible to the masses here and try to adhere to the master plan of 1960. We put about $2 billion a year in our general fund into financial aid. We serve roughly 360,000 students in the Cal Grant program and about 80,000 students in the middle class scholarship in its first year of operations. We're proud of that. We know many wouldn't be able to afford to go to college without this program by the state of California. We also know there's much more to be done, and we'll talk about a bit of those opportunities and ideas today, looking at the Cal Grant B specifically and the award levels, looking at the Cal Grant competitive piece and how too many young students get left behind, and also talk about ways how we can improve the middle class scholarship program. So with that, we'll start with the first item. The first items related to Hastings College of Law. So we can have our panelists come forward, please, from the Department of Finance, the LAO, and Hastings College of Law. Okay, good afternoon. You proceed.
For the Hastings College of the Law, which is a $1 million augmentation over the 14-15 levels. The administration continues to expect that the college will use these resources to make progress towards various goals, including focusing on student success, aligning its programs to the state's economic and workforce needs, and to use the resources productively and maintain affordability. The augmentation provided in 15-16 represents a 2% increase in the college's core resources. We define these resources as the college's general fund appropriation plus the student enrollment fee revenues, which are used interchangeably within the college's budget. The percentage increase is equivalent to the growth in core resources proposed in the UC budget in the governor's budget. Hastings will hold enrollment fees constant in 2015-16 as required by the administration's multi-year funding plan. Fee revenues for the college constitute about 4/5 of its core resources, whereas the revenues at UC constitute significantly less as a proportion of the core resources in its budget. Therefore, we provide an augmentation on the Hastings core resources as opposed to simply on the general fund appropriation to better allow the college to address its needs in the context of the state's expectation that it not increase enrollment fees through the 2016-17 fiscal year. I'd be happy to take any questions.
LAO?
Paul Glozewski with the Legislative Analyst's Office. We continue to have concerns about the governor's multi-year funding plan for Hastings. The plan provides no direction in terms of how Hastings is supposed to spend the money that it's provided. And also, it doesn't include any performance outcome measures like we have for UC and CSU. So you have virtually no information about how the money is being spent or what outcomes you're going to get for the funding that you would provide. In our budget analysis this year, we did calculate per student spending at Hastings today versus in 2007-8 prior to the most recent recession to see what had occurred. And we found that spending per student has increased 60% since that time. And this is a result of a couple of factors. One, Hastings has decreased enrollment, so per student spending would go up if you lower enrollment. Second, state support has increased a little bit, and as well as tuition revenue and other revenues. So there's more funding and fewer students, which means more spending per student. This has allowed Hastings to enhance its program. It's lowered its student-to-faculty ratios. And while that might be a worthwhile goal, our concern is this wasn't a policy decision that the state made. It was just a result of the governor's plan to allow them flexibility. Moreover, we would note the state has expressed serious concerns with UC spending in recent years, even though over the same time period, we calculated that UC spending only increased 3% per student. To improve budgeting for and oversight of Hastings moving forward, we have two recommendations. One would be to link base funding increases with an inflation index. And we calculate that this would provide Hastings with $866,000 in the budget year, which is a little less than what the governor proposes, assuming tuition remains flat. Second, we would recommend that you set enrollment targets for Hastings. So this would ensure that in the future, if enrollment were to decrease, funding would decrease. If enrollment were to increase, funding would increase. Those are our two recommendations, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Department of Finance. Hastings, did you want to add a few comments on the proposal as well as maybe to respond to some of the issues raised by the analyst?
Yeah, my name is David Seward. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Hastings College of Law. We support the governor's budget proposal. It recognizes our needs to fund core operating costs. It allows us for the fourth consecutive year to maintain flat student fees and allows us to, deal with the mandatory cost increases that we're obligated to deal with, primarily related to the employer's obligations vis-a-vis participation in the UC retirement system, as well as health care costs. In terms of the analyst's observations, I think it is very important to note we undertook a strategic planning process wrapped up in 2011, and we recognized the fundamental changes in the marketplace that we serve. The graduates of the institution were walking into a very challenging job market. There was clearly an oversupply of law graduates in the marketplace, and we felt it was incumbent upon us to structure our operations to serve that market we serve. So we made a conscious decision after a lot of study and analysis that the experiences of the students would be benefited by reducing our enrollment by 20 to 25%. So the analyst is correct. When you do the math, you divide increasing costs, primarily fixed non-discretionary costs, over a smaller base, and you get a higher cost per student. On the health benefits side and retiree health care and retiree obligations, the cost increase has been averaging 17% a year. Those are mandatory cost increases. We are a passive participant in the UC health benefit programs. We benefit by their economies of scale, but we do not control program design or the actuarial analyses that go to support the incorporation of the cost structure. I think in terms of the recommendation that a per-student funding formula be adopted, that would create some disincentives to do the right thing. It would create the incentive to grow regardless of the likelihood or prospects of our graduates to gain employment. They would certainly graduate with high levels of student debt. Our average is about $130,000 per head. But I think it would create a disincentive to structure our operations and our outputs to the needs of the market that we serve. And so I would not be particularly supportive of the analyst's recommendations.
Thank you. Questions from committee members? Ms. Kim?
Okay, great. Thank you. Just make a comment that I know it is, as a public institution, it's our state's priority to keep tuition and fees low for students. So your request for funding augmentation is consistent with that. So I guess that's why you prefer or support governor's proposal. But I also, I've listened to LAO's recommendation. So my request to you, would you be, you just mentioned that you do not necessarily agree with the LAO's recommendation, but let me repeat. would you be willing to submit a report by, let's say, September 30 of this year with a proposed methodology for funding enrollment growth, and also the second LAO's recommendation for setting enrollment targets before we even consider supporting this?
If that were the direction of the committee, we certainly would be happy to do so. The argument that we should have enrollment targets and be on a per-student funding formula, it's not a methodology that's applied to University of California graduate programs or professional schools, so we would be an outlier in that regard. To conduct a study would certainly not be problematic, and we would be more than willing to do so. So if that were the committee's preferences, again, we would not have a concern doing such a study.
I mean, Hastings is, after all, a public institution, but it's very unique that you do provide a specific area, which is law. And so, I mean, I would be comfortable if you would accept LAO's recommendations.
Okay. Well, I would have to check with my dean on that, but I don't think he'd have a particular issue with that.
You do not think you would have an issue?
I do not think he would have an issue with us doing an analysis. It would.
Okay.
I think that would be acceptable on our side, and we'd be more than happy to do so.
Okay. I'll put it in there.
Then you.
Yeah. Any other questions from committee members on this item?
Move the proposal.
Okay, maybe we could move it with the suggestion of Assemblymember Kim with the report back on that item
By September 30.
by September the 3rd.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Roll. Okay, call the roll.
Mr. McCarty?
Aye.
Mr. Chavez?
Aye.
Ms. Kim?
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell? Mr. Ting?
Okay, 5-0. Item passes. Next item, number 2. Yeah. Department of Finance.
Yes, good afternoon. Sally Lukenbill, Department of Finance. The issue before you today is to consider a proposal to issue $36.8 million in lease revenue bonds to build a new 50,000 square foot academic building at 333 Golden Gate Avenue in San Francisco. The new facility would replace Hastings' primary academic building currently located at 198 McAllister. The four-story structure at 198 McAllister Street was constructed in 1953 and contains approximately 76,000 square feet. It's a primary location of Hastings classrooms and lecture halls, housing approximately 83% of the school's seminar rooms and lecture halls, accounting for 92% of the total classroom seating capacity. The existing facility has significant building deficiencies and inefficiencies, and this proposal would address those deficiencies and build a brand-new state-of-the-art academic facility that would benefit both the campus and the neighboring community. Thank you.
Okay. LAO?
We would just note that the proposal before you requests funding for all 3 phases of the capital outlay project, so that's preliminary plans, working drawings, and construction. Normally, you would approve them sort of sequentially each year as they're developed, so you have a better knowledge of the project as it moves along, better knowledge of the costs. The reason why the Department of Finance is proposing all 3 phases at once has to do with the financing mechanism, lease revenue bonds, and I won't go too much into the technical details, but if you have further questions, feel free to ask. What your committee staff has recommended to ensure there's some oversight moving forward, that you're not approving all 3 phases at once and never revisiting the project again, is having a 30-day review period by the Joint Legislative Budget Committee prior to the construction phase of the project. And we would recommend that you approve this language that committee staff recommended.
With that addition.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Any comments from committee members?
Move the recommendation.
Are you okay spending $30-something million in construction in San Francisco, Mr. Ting?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. It's been moved and seconded by
Second.
Mr. Ting. Please call the roll.
Mr. McCarty?
Aye.
Mr. Chavez?
Aye.
Ms. Kim? Mr. O'Donnell? Mr. Ting?
Aye.
Measure passes.
Okay, we'll now go on to the California Student Aid Commission and several items on this commission. This will be a popular topic today and throughout the rest of these budget discussions. Everybody likes financial aid to help expand college opportunity. With that, we'll start with issue number 3, the grant delivery system modernization. Department of Finance.
Good afternoon, Matt Seha, Department of Finance. So the third item on the budget includes $840,000 in 4 positions that are starting in October to begin the modernization efforts of the California Student Aid Commission's grant delivery system. So as you may know, the grant delivery system is a computer system that uses student data to verify and determine students' eligibility for various Cal Grant awards as well as other financial awards. So the existing delivery system is approximately 30 years old, and the Cal Grant program has undergone several modifications in that time span. In addition to the Cal Grant program, grant delivery systems had additional applications added, such as the Middle Class Scholarship and the DREAM Act, which increased the need for increased capacity, performance, and system integration and security components. So system upgrade will address these issues and provide a better experience for students. Thank you. I'm happy to take your questions.
Okay. Elio?
We don't have any concerns with the proposal to plan for a new IT system. We did have one concern with some of the positions that are being requested. So the proposal requests 4 permanent positions to be added to the Student Aid Commission to help plan for the new IT system. And we agree that new positions are needed. It's a new workload to plan for this new system. However, this workload is limited term in nature. The planning process will only take a few years. So we're recommending that you make the positions limited term positions instead of permanent ongoing positions.
Okay. Student Aid Commission.
Good afternoon, Chair McCarthy and members of the committee. My name is Diana Fuentes-Michel, and I'm the Executive Director of the California Student Aid Commission. And with me today are Janet McDuffie, who is our Chief of Administrative Services, but she is responsible for helping the Commission manage the grant delivery system, and Tracy Howard, who is our Chief of Information Technology. Tracy will be joining the Commission staff. She's currently with the Department of Finance, working with their Fiscal project. In brief, as the Department of Finance and the analysts note, I believe that the need for a replacement system of the Cal Grant program is very clear for all of us who work at the Student Aid Commission and for those students and institutions who work with us. Technology has greatly changed, and currently our current grant delivery system is not able to communicate with students in the manner that we would like. Students are now used to technology where they can receive messaging versus texting. The Commission cannot provide that capability to them. Over the years, both the Department of Education at the federal level and the Commission have done its best to try to modernize our system so that we are in sync with what students are experiencing as they seek admission and financial aid to the institutions that they choose to attend. I've briefly just passed out to you a graph which shows the Commission's state operations, our overhead, our position count over the last decade. And as you can see, the Commission is very effectively run in terms of the percentage of budget to the amount of dollars that we administer. And we believe that the positions that we are requesting today are very much needed so that we can manage the IT project that we are planning for and do it in a manner where we do it effectively. The risk here is great. We, every year, need to be on time in the administration of the Cal Grant program, where money matters for poor kids who don't have the resources to go to college. We need to make sure that our existing system continues to run through the transition to a new system, and we need to make sure that the new system comes up in a manner that has no problems, no delays, and no additional cost to the state. So I'm here to answer any question, and I have staff that are working on the project in case you have any additional questions of us in terms of our plans. The budget only includes $840,000 in planning funds. It does not yet approve a new grant delivery system.
Okay. Questions from committee members? Mr. Chavez?
Well, we had met before, and I appreciate that for the people who don't see this, from 2007-8 down to 2014, there's been a significant downsize, almost like about 30% of your organization. So I appreciate the efficiency in what you're doing. My question goes more to the issue of, it's my understanding this is ongoing funding. And so if it's ongoing funding and bringing in a program, as the LOA has discussed, with 4 permanent and 3 consultants, I believe, with Reed Head, are you really going to need this money forever, or is it going to be dropped off?
Well, the current program has been growing over the last 10 years, as the data I provided you show. And this really is both an issue of timing for us as also an issue of resources. It's very difficult in this environment to get IT folks to come work for the state. And short-term prospects versus long-term prospects offer us a better chance of getting the quality people that we need to get in the long term to run the system. I would like to see permanent funding for these positions to provide stability to the Commission after a number of years of instability. An example, Member Chavez, this particular year we've had to redirect funds for short-term timing issues. The middle class scholarship only had 6 months until we had to bring it online, and it was very difficult to get those contractors to come work for us. In addition to that, we also had, if you're aware, a general fund loan requirement this year because the federal government did not fund the federal challenge grant up front. We had to fund it in the rears. So there have been a number of challenges at the Commission to maintain the existing staff. And I think in the long term, if we have these positions, we'll be able to address some of the short-term issues that we've had in terms of maintaining staff. And we believe that as the program continues to grow, we will have the need to have these positions on an ongoing basis, and we'd like to see them permanently because the workload is already there. We need to make sure that we run the existing program effectively while we're bringing the new program up. And I think it would be short-sighted if we don't get these positions funded in the long term because we'll have a more difficult time in the long term.
You still see the requirement for the 3 consultants, though?
The 3 consultants, we would be more than willing to come back to you 5 years from now if we don't need those positions. I'm sure Finance will be looking at that closely as we make the transition. But at this point, we'd like to see the resources there so we can get this job done right.
And the last thought is you mentioned this does not fund the hardware software program you're going to be developing.
Right, this is just planning. This $840,000 helps us plan, and we have to do a good job at it so we're not back here explaining why we didn't do it right.
How much is it anticipated it's going to cost to put this?
There's been some preliminary estimates done by the California Technology Agency and our agency, and I believe the initial 5-year cost could be as much as $28 million. $17 million in new cost and $9 million in redirected funds.
I'm concerned. First of all, I like what you're doing because I voted for the scholarship. I think it's important we do it right for helping the kids. And I understand you have a challenge to do this. But my only concern is to make this so ongoing. And so if we did a limiter, we could also look at it in 3-4 years and have you brief how the project's going. If it needs it, then we can support it. So
I would just like to see some language that actually does an assessment of our capacity, if that be the case, because I think that for many years we've gone understaffed, and it's very important, and particularly in the IT area. Again, I can't stress enough how difficult it is to hire qualified staff right now in this market. It's very difficult. They have options, and folks that are good, they will be promoted out and go to larger agencies. The Commission is a very small place, And Rancho Cordova is not necessarily an easy commute to get to, particularly in the Sacramento area, and that's where we are.
So what would you like to have it say then?
We're out in Rancho
No, you
Cordova.
said
Yeah.
you'd like, if we did.
I would just like to see some language that basically does an assessment of our need at that time. I understand finance is willing to do that 5 years out. I believe the positions are necessary now just from what we're experiencing in terms of our IT capacity.
So would you be willing to take the LAO's recommendation to make it a limited term and come back at 5 years for an assessment?
I would prefer permanent, but if the committee's action is to take a shorter look at it in terms of 4 or 5 years, then the committees obviously can vote to do that, and we would do what the committee and the legislature ask of us.
I'm leaning that way, but I'll listen to my colleagues, and if there's that consensus, and maybe we'll go that way. But I don't want my discussion in this area to any way cast a shadow on the great work you're doing. I just want to make sure you can do it, but I also want to make sure we're taking care of the dollars. Because it's going to be a tough year financially for us. Because everybody has ideas. Thank you.
Councilmember Kim?
Great. Well, we all agree that IT project is really important, and I know you're hiring a IT division chief with someone with very high IT credentials, but I personally have not met this person, so I'm pretty sure you're hiring someone with great experience who is capable of overseeing major new IT projects. But I would be interested in having this committee hear from that person and their thoughts about the proposal, and I would feel more comfortable if that was the case.
Well, I can introduce you to Tracy Howard, who will be the IT chief over that project, as well as Janet McDuffie, who also sits to me here to my right. Janet's been with the commission over 30 years and has participated in a number of our IT efforts. So I can introduce you to Tracy, and then Janet and I and Tracy can answer any questions you might have.